I'm Danny Otto. Welcome into another episode of That Recap Show. Now, before we get into the episode, just wanted to issue major spoiler alert. We are going to be going over everything that happened in Black Panther Wakanda Forever. So if you haven't seen that movie yet, you may want to pause this video, head over to Disney Plus because it just released on there. Check out that movie and then come back and enjoy the breakdown. Now, with that out of the way, let's start the show.
Poppin' Off presents That Recap Show.
All right, joining with me to break down everything from Black Panther Wakanda Forever, it's Jon Jon Rico.
It's the Namor thing.
Hello.
Namor.
We just had a conversation before we hit record about how we were going to pronounce Namor's name following the movie because it was said both ways, both the classic comic way, Namor, and Namor.
Right.
So we were just trying to keep ourselves consistent.
Yeah, and I already caught myself.
Immediately, you changed your mind.
I caught myself right away. Yeah.
But anyway, what a way to bookend Phase 4, right? Incredible. We have so much we're going to get into, both from the amazing acting, the intense scenes of grief and trauma, and everything about this movie was done absolutely incredibly. But before we get into all that, I think the easiest way to sum up this movie is with two words:
emotional damage.
That's all I could think of was the meme when I was trying to describe this movie. That's all I could. And not even like in a joking way. I just feel like the emotions of this movie, obviously, right on the surface is this grief, and it's dealing with grief and loss and stuff like that. And it's really, it shows us how, when unchecked, how these emotions can be damaging. And I really, I'm starting it off on like a funny meme of emotional damage, but at the same time, I mean, it really is kind of the theme of this movie and dealing with emotion and seeing how emotion can have both positive and negative effects on people. And I just think it was done in such an incredible way throughout the entire movie, and seeing different ways of how emotion can lead people to do things. And I just thought it was, I can't say it enough on how well I think this was done and how great of a movie it was. But Rico, I could go on and on. What were some of your instant reactions from Wakanda Forever?
Yeah. Just like you said, a fitting end for Phase 4, right? This is a really beautiful story about loss and showing how people channel their grief and it ultimately said like how they let it consume them in different ways. And ultimately because of Chadwick Boseman's passing, of course, this is a whole new story that was crafted by Ryan Coogler than what he originally planned. Right. And it allowed Shuri to step into the forefront and tell this great story where she is kind of like burying herself in her work and ultimately has to find this sense of purpose within herself. Like obviously she can use her talents in science to destroy the world, as she wants to say. But at the end, it takes not just one loss, but a couple different losses for her to ultimately find her ultimate purpose, which was, in the end, this is a fitting tribute to Chadwick at the both him and the character of T'Challa. So obviously, like, just a completely personal story for all the actors involved. For Ryan Coogler, they were also close with them. You feel that in this movie more than once, especially within the final scenes of the movie, and of course the opening scenes where they took the pretty, I would say it's a pretty cool thing to do. Not cool, but I love their choice to kind of make it mimic Chadwick's real life situation because if you know, because it one feeds into Shuri's story perfectly. How her she dives into her work because she feels like she couldn't save Chadwick T'Challa in time. Um, and then only leads into this kind of great story with Namor and Telecon, right? Um, but yeah, I was beautiful, and it's worthy of all the accolades it's gotten leading up to this. So
Yeah, absolutely. One of the kind of best things about us kind of taking a beat before we recap this is that we do know, the awards that this movie has been receiving and has been nominated for and stuff like that that we wouldn't have kind of known, I guess, if we had just recapped it right away. But we waited until it got released on the Disney Plus, and so we've kind of started to go through the nominations and the awards and all of that kind of stuff. So it's kind of cool to see these incredible performances being paid off and being celebrated and stuff like that to not just like MCU fans, but like everyone type of thing.
right, and I do have a couple like minor criticisms. I feel like one of them is not even really like a criticism; it's just like something that's completely unavoidable. But I did feel like the inclusion of Martin Freeman's character Ross was like kind of like shoehorned in a little bit. It just kind of felt like it was just kind of this little side adventure that he was part of the first movie, so you bring him back. But it also just kind of felt like they were like forwarding another story they were going to tell in a different project, aka Thunderbolts in this case, with the whole Val stuff. So I felt like at the end of the day, it didn't really need to be there after the second watch. And you could have shaved off about 15, 20 minutes of the movie of that right there. So it was a little bit long in that regard. And the other, it's not even, I can't even call it criticism, but the loss of Chadwick did kind of leave this little bit of a void there because ultimately the first movie is like this ensemble piece where you have all these great characters interact with each other, but they're all centered around T'Challa.
Right.
And this movie is kind of like it's all those characters shining, but there's not that one thing binding them all together anymore, which is kind of like that little void that we're seeing. It kind of sucks to see my boy M'Baku kind of get like kind of pushed to the side a little bit in this movie. I feel like they could have done a lot more with that character, even though I did like the stuff that he was in. The stuff with him and Shuri were really great scenes.
Yeah.
I just feel like you could have done more with that character and have him be more involved within that little inner circle there too. Just kind of little minor things there, but it's hard to nitpick at this movie because there's really so much to love about it too at the same time.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You know what? I do agree with you. After the second watch, going through that, all of that side stuff could have
Yeah,
been teased in a post credit. We could have added like an additional post credit with
yeah.
Val and the agent talking or lining up Thunderbolts just or hinting at like anything like that. And it would have still got the purpose across, I guess.
Yeah, you could have had
Um,
that post credit scene that we gotten at the end of the movie, and then left that stuck to teasing towards the future. But I understand why you made that choice. Like you keep it tight, tight knit, personal, and you end on that emotional note. So 100% makes sense why they did it. But yeah, I think you could have swapped some little things around here and there and made it a little bit more better. I thought.
yeah, absolutely. You want to get to some big takeaways?
Yeah.
Awesome. All right, why don't you kick off big takeaways this time?
Okay. So the first thing I want to do is shout out Angela Bassett. One, she's already earning all the praise that she deserves. She won the Golden Globe, and she became the first MCU actor who became nominated for an Oscar, which is pretty fantastic. She's a legend in the game already leading up to this, so it's obviously no surprise that she can carry a performance like this. But in this kind of a movie, of course, we've seen some pretty great performances, but she's always been kind of like that upper echelon tier. I feel like as Ramonda, and boy, do they really give her some shining moments in this. Particularly the scene where she has to fire Okoye from the Dora Milaje. They talk about all the things that they have to sacrifice, and Okoye talking about everything that she lost. There, Ramonda talks about where's your husband? Like she's in a jail somewhere, and you get to visit him, but where's the rest of my family? And powerful speech by her. The very first kind of scene we see her in, where she's talking to like the Senate or whatever, like the government officials from different countries, uh, kind of going in between that and the way it's overlaid with like the Dormalaje attacking the ship at the same time. So the way that was edited was fantastic, but the way they just really upped her like royal presence in this movie, I felt like was really powerful. Uh, Ultimately leading up to her making the big sacrifice when Namor sinks the city. Big powerful moment too, and I would love those two characters interacting between each other too. Of course, the first time we see Namor is on that nice little night scene where they're kind of trying to do that little closure fire, like they're burning the funeral clothing,
Right.
and he comes up in the water, and there's just that little interaction between them. That's a king versus a queen right there, and you can just tell between those two actors. That was just real powerful stuff right there. Um, so I was really glad that Ramonda really got a chance to like really shine in this movie, even though she wasn't in it for the entire movie. Um, her presence was a huge impact, especially on the character of Shuri and what that ultimately does for her character later on in the movie. Um, I just thought that was really, really fantastic stuff. But kind of going back to what I was just talking about too, my other part of my takeaway is that Namor has arrived. Like he's finally here in the MCU, and holy crap! Like what a debut for one of Marvel's oldest heroes or characters. Like you can't even call him a hero because he's technically you can't call him that. He's more of an anti-hero kind of character. And I thought the way that he played off of one Ramonda, which I was talking about earlier, was really great, but also the relationship between him and Shuri was just fantastic. Um, I love the way they kind of balance off this really understanding between each other, and they say they see they are so similar in different ways because of their leaders of these cultures that aren't really known to other people. So and they share precious resources that only these civilizations are currently known like privy to. So um, seeing that relationship kind of play itself out in both like the friendly ways and the not so friendly ways was really fun throughout the movies. Especially because in the comics, Black Panther and Namor have that kind of that same dynamic, and it creates a really cool arc between them in the book. So that kind of Wakanda, well, in the books it's Atlantis, but in here
Right.
Talokan, which I thought loved that too, being of Mexican descent, seeing like that culture brought into the MCU in this way was really cool for a legendary character like Namor. And man, like his whole design, the ears, the feathered ankles, and just that way that was incorporated. Like I love the way in this rewatch when I was watching the way he's flying through, like the way he kind of uses like running to like adjust like his speed and direction. And I thought the way that they handled like his flying was really, really cool. And when he's like 500 years old or something like that, we kind of learn, and he's super powerful. Like the way they display his powers, go just taking down those ships with like one little swoop was just like, dang.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was really cool. And then of course seeing Shuri using her smarts to take out a character like that was also really great as well. So he presented himself. He was presented as like a great foe for Black Panther, but also a possible future hero as well. But you can use him in many different ways, which I think is really cool about that.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree in both of your takeaway points. I hands down agree. And I mean, just like to kind of play off what you were talking about. We got the introduction of Namor, which incredible. I'm looking forward to kind of seeing where his story goes in the
Yeah.
MCU and
First
moving
mutant.
forward. Yeah,
Yeah.
even though technically we got Miss Marvel being called a mutant
Well, the
before.
world's first
Right,
mutant
right,
before
right,
yeah.
right. But we also had the introduction of Riri Williams
Mhm.
in this movie. So we got Namor and we got Riri.
Yeah.
And I just like Namor, I really enjoyed, us kind of meeting Riri Williams here and then having, be excited for a series and to see her pop up in other things moving forward and stuff like that. I don't feel like she was, just placed here for like Marvel to go, "Hey, we have something coming up soon, so hopefully you like this character." I really feel like her inclusion in this movie was something important. It was something special. And what I kind of thought about, and I kind of thought more about this in because I liked it walking out of the first watch. I liked her. I was excited for her character. I'm excited for Ironheart and stuff like that. But after watching it again, I found a different way to actually enjoy her inclusion in this movie, and it was because it was a very important perspective that we got of her experiencing all of these events. Kind of, I mean, she was experiencing like most of them, not all of them, but she was experiencing most of them side by side with Shuri. And we see, she's in it. She said, like, you guys have brought me in. I'm here for it. I'm as far as I'm concerned, you guys are family. Like, you know what I mean? She's here to help. But at the same time, she is kind of still an outside perspective of these events. It's not as personal for her. So I feel like she has a little bit of a lighter perspective of it. She's not completely letting her emotions and grief guide exactly what like her response is for things. And I think it's really important because there are times in it where it's not that she's questioning, but there are just times in it when you can see how, how grief and loss is so pushing on Shuri. And in the same sense, you can kind of see how Riri Williams is handling it a little bit differently. And it's just, I think it was very important to have a person that's experiencing all of this side by side and still invested, but still able to kind of, associate what's actually happening and what needs to happen type of thing. And for me, I almost looked at it as when we had Shuri in the first Black Panther movie, because we had the first Black Panther movie and it was just like you said, it was all centered around T'Challa, and T'Challa kind of had emotional response to and emotional responsibility to something that his father had done years before.
Mhm.
Like, he didn't even know about it, but he felt responsible for it. So he was kind of closer to the situation than anybody else, even though everybody else was kind of experiencing it. And Shuri also was experiencing it. He was kind of being guided by his emotions
Yeah.
for that situation. He felt
Put it
responsible.
all on his shoulders.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so just like that in the first movie, I feel like Riri Williams is almost the Shuri in this movie, where Shuri's putting everything, all the grief, all the trauma, all this emotional distress on her own shoulders. And
Yeah.
and
And it's
Riri,
piling on her too.
exactly. It's pushing her down so hard, and she's just like, you can see it, the unbelievable weight of all of this. And I think having a character like Riri Williams in this gives us that lighter perspective type of thing, where she's still going through all of it, but she's just not as close to it. She's not as in it as Shuri is in this. And it made me think of those as kind of almost parallels from the first movie and the second movie. And it was really interesting to see that, where it didn't feel like it was a shoehorned thing in there to go, hey, we're just introducing a new character for later on. It's an important perspective in this movie. And I think it was a good way to have a new character and to also have a character that had that perspective throughout the entire events of this movie. And so I just wanted to note that there's so much to just talk about with this movie. And there's so many things that, I want to talk about in this movie. We could spend, 2 hours talking about this movie and all the parts in it and how everything was really great.
Yeah. Killmonger showed back up.
I know that was insane, but but yeah, I thought that was a really cool way to incorporate a new character, but to also have this small parallel from the first movie. At least in my perspective, when I was watching it a second time, that was kind of, it popped into my head, and it may just have been me, and it may have just been because I was really paying attention when I was watching the second watch through, because obviously we were getting ready to do a recap on it and stuff like that. But that's just kind of what I was feeling as a parallel of characters wise, and it was interesting to see how far Shuri has gone since the first movie because of all of the things that have happened and how it has really shaped her as a character, and to see kind of Riri Williams is almost the starting point of where Shuri was in the first Black Panther. So it was just very interesting. I definitely needed to point that out. But Rico, you want to get to some predictions?
Yeah, let's do it.
Awesome. All right. I'm going to kick off predictions. It's not even so much of a prediction. It's more so of something that I would kind of like to see moving forward, because, and I'll kind of, paint the picture of why I want to see this beforehand. We had a lot of Namor and Shuri when they first go to Telecon, and we get this, Shuri gets this tour of the city, and she's seeing the good in it. She's seeing all of these people living, and
what Namor has to protect, as he says.
And in comparison of what she has to protect in Wakanda and stuff like that. But we get a glimpse of the city, just like we get the glimpse of Wakanda in both movies and stuff like that. And there's just that kind of mutual respect and almost friendship, almost friendly towards each other type of thing in these scenes. And I really enjoyed that. And I know, that was just a kind of glimpse at it. And then we get snapped kind of back into reality when, Wakanda responds and tries to get Shuri, and then casualties of war, and you know what I mean? But I'm really interested in the future, kind of seeing I guess a common threat, a common enemy, to where these two sides have to work together again. I think it would be something really interesting to kind of, because now I think we're kind of like in I put in parentheses, I put a Warriors agreement type of thing, where it's like a ceasefire basically.
Yeah, like a peace treaty.
Right.
Yeah, essentially a ceasefire.
Right. For right now. So I would like to take that a step further, and I would like to see a future movie where there's a common threat for both nations, basically, and then they have to kind of work together. Because I think that mutual respect and kind of leadership could really be something cool to see, like the dynamics of both forces working together. And I'm really interested in kind of seeing that in the future. So it's not really a prediction. It's not like I think this is going to happen or anything, but I would just be really interested to kind of see a movie that centers around a common threat where both of these nations have to work together. I think it would be really interesting to see that dynamic and to kind of move forward with their relationships, and to see these two nations that were battling against each other to have to combine forces, because I think ultimately I think they are two very, very powerful nations, and I think together they could kind of they could take down a common threat. And I just think I think it would be really interesting to see, and I'm all for it if it happens. But Rico, what were some of your predictions moving forward?
Yeah, what's interesting about that is, at the end of the movie, you get the shot of, they're doing the ceremonial thing where they have the challenge day. And of course, Shuri wasn't there. And the only person who was there was M'Baku. So I had to take that means that no one else challenged him, or whoever did challenge him, he beat them. Well, if anything, if we're going to see that dynamic, but I want to see just like a speaking scene between Namor and M'Baku, especially if M'Baku is the king. I just feel like that has all the makings for like a really great probably friendship.
Yeah.
But yeah, but also you have Shuri there as the Black Panther as well, so they have their great protector and King M'Baku working alongside Namor, maybe Atuma and Namora, but like all these different, and then you got the Midnight Angels as well. So you got like this great little team that they've reestablished there, of their own. But another thing that was introduced in this movie, plenty of things were introduced in this movie, by the way. But the very end of the movie, we get the touching scene of closure. I would say at the end, Shuri makes her way to Haiti, and Nakia has kind of prepared a little funeral pyre there for her. She finally does what she couldn't do earlier on, which was burn the funeral clothing, for not just for her brother now, but both for her mother and her brother.
Right.
So that just, and then of course it cuts to a great montage of Chadwick and their scenes together. And so it ends on a huge emotional note. But then you get your post credit scene, and we are introduced to little Toussaint. And we're like, who's this little boy? Of course. No, we learned that Nakia left, after the events of the first movie. That's why we didn't see them in Infinity War and Endgame. And we learned that they had a son. Yeah, and his Haitian name is Toussaint, but then lets us know that his real name is Prince T'Challa. And of course, like he asked him, will you keep my secret and all that? And I think there's a great little exchange between them. But one, it's a great way to introduce this character because it makes sense why Nakia hasn't been around and especially important times like Infinity War and Endgame. So I thought that was a really cool way to integrate her character into this. But also, you kind of are opening this door now for the role of T'Challa to be recast by another actor because it can be now played as T'Challa's son, the late T'Challa's son.
Yeah.
So that's a cool kind of way to get around that while you're still honoring the character that he played, but also forwarding the legacies of the character moving into these next movies and projects. So I really love that. I have to feel like maybe something like Secret Wars is something where you can see like time and different universes playing so we could possibly see a version of this T'Challa's Black Panther from another world, like another universe, possibly. So there's a lot of doors that you possibly opened up with this new character, and even just the kind of dynamic you can have of him still being a younger boy and learning from his auntie, the Black Panther. It also is kind of like a cool little character dynamic you can do as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd be down for seeing like Shuri giving lessons to little Prince T'Challa.
Right.
I think that would be a really cool, like, whether we got like like a special presentation or a special feature of that led into like a Secret Wars or to another movie type of thing.
Yeah.
I think something like that would be really interesting. And yeah, that you bring it up, I think that sounds like it sounds perfect. I would definitely like to see that.
And we have the Ironheart series coming out this year, so we have more of this story to look forward to with Riri later on too as well. So I know Ryan Coogler has a role. I don't think he's a producer role in that maybe, but it's cool that we're going to get more of that character in the future and seeing what her future in the MCU could be as possibly a member of this Young Avengers roster that could be building up. I feel like her introduction kind of felt me more like Peter Parker's in Civil War, like the way you bring in this young, bright character under someone else's wing. And the fact that her suit's still in Wakanda is still something that we had to see resolved too. So how is she going to get that damn suit back? Or does she just now have the ability to just make something better with whatever material she can back at home? So yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Tony went through a whole bunch of Mark suits.
Exactly.
So
She's kind of ahead the game on him already when it comes to like advancements. So perfect.
But not only that, so we do have the Ironheart series to look forward to very soon, but we got Thunderbolts coming up eventually, and the rumors are that Thunderbolts might be going to try to get something from Wakanda.
Maybe, yeah, that's gonna be closing out Phase 5 too. So there we go. We have our Phase 4 closer here, and then we have something setting up possibly our Phase 5 closer, which is interesting enough.
Yeah, it's very. I mean, sky's the limit on when we could start seeing, Wakanda again or Talokan again or Namor again, but I'm all for it. I can't wait to kind of see these characters interact with each other again, and kind of just like you've been saying. I mean, it opens the door to a lot of possibilities for Secret Wars, and the multiverse makes it even bigger of like opportunities to see things moving forward, and with the Kane Dynasty and everything, crazy things are happening. We're leading to very crazy things.
Yeah, no, buckle up.
I know, it's going to be absolutely insane. But as we always say, that's what we think. Let us know in the comments below. What did you think of Wakanda Forever? And where do you see these characters going? And are you excited for the Ironheart series and the Thunderbolts? All of these have possibilities of seeing some of our favorite characters from Wakanda and even Namor, if anything's possible at this point. And as always, don't forget, like, subscribe, and turn on notifications to hear about all of our video and audio podcast releases. Bye, everybody!
Poppin' Off presents That Recap Show.